Bristol Museum has revealed plans to become the permanent home for the Edward Colston statue. You remember that one, toppled and pushed into Bristol Harbour during the UK's Black Lives Matter protests.
The BLM agitators have tarnished and traduced the reputations of many great figures, from Churchill to Nelson to David Hume. One second, please let me have my chance, my dear. But that's not an argument. We're talking about history.
Hold on.
The fact that 7 in every 1,000 Africans today is living in slavery, 10 million people. So where were the protests? Where were the protests outside the Nigerian High Commission?
The sparring partners are back at it again. Joy Reid's twin sister Iman Ayton takes on legendary British historian, the woke left dismantler Rafe. Hey fam, welcome back to One and Done. Today we're going to delve into a controversial topic that has sparked heated debates and divided opinions. The recent decision by Bristol Council to delist the statue of slave trader Edward Colston and place it in a museum has ignited discussion about history, activism, and social values. Duking it out is Iman Ayton from Black Lives Matter and historian Rafe Heidel Manku. Join us as we explore the implications of this decision and the broader implications it holds for Western society. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, ring the notification bell, share this video far and wide, and without delay, let's roll the tape.
Time now for our big debate this morning. Bristol Museum has revealed plans to become the permanent home for the Edward Colston statue. You remember that one, toppled and pushed into Bristol Harbour during the UK's Black Lives Matter protests. A vote will take place today to decide whether the statue of the 17th century slave trader will go on display in Bristol's M Shed Museum permanently. Let's get more, should we? Iman Ayton from Black Lives Matter and Rafe Heidel Manku. Thank you both for joining us on the programme. Away you go.
Now being put into a museum. It's a very good thing. Why? Because it's a British.
All right. Well, let me come in. All right.
For British museums, British.
Look, I'm not here to defend Colston, right?
Okay.
I mean, the BLM agitators have tarnished and traduced the reputations of many great figures, from Churchill to Nelson to David Hume. One second, please let me have my chance, my dear. And I'll always defend those characters. But Colston has got a very dark record when it comes to slavery, and so no one will defend that, even though, of course, he does have also a philanthropic side. People are complicated. History is complicated. My issue is with the toppling of the statue and the way in which it was toppled, with the frenzied baying mob attacking it in scenes reminiscent of the villagers going after Frankenstein with pitchforks and flaming torches, or even, like the Taliban and ISIS attacking monuments and sculptures that they found offensive. And of course, there's a good deal of comparison there because, of course, like the Taliban, BLM and others want to try to erase our history, ban our books, decolonize our curriculums, police our speech. These are sort of year zero cultures which are very damaging to British identity and the sense of nationhood in this country. And all of this happened without public consent.
Yeah, you can't have things both ways. You can't be bitching, moaning and crying because schools want to ban books about critical race theory, and then on the other hand, you want to tear down statues of slavery. You either want to learn, teach, and talk about history, or you don't. You can't be doing both at the same time. As Rafe said, people are complicated. Human beings are complex beings. On one hand, they can be doing bad, and then on the other hand, they're also doing good. Two things can be true at once, as they say. Why would you want to get rid of a possible teachable moment? Why wouldn't you want to teach about history and how far we have actually come? Some people would say that we're more civilized now. Other people will say we're not. I'm going to guess someone's going to get very triggered shortly.
We know from polling that only 13% of the public agreed with the manner in which this statue was toppled, even though 40% agreed with the statue being taken away. And of course, you also have to ask, what is the connection here? I would like to see the statue actually re-erected where it was, with all of the graffiti staying on it, all the vandalism there, to stand as a monument to a moment of national hysteria when the nation was gripped by a mass psychosis because of the death of somebody in another continent. George Floyd had nothing to do with the British story. His death had no relevance over here, but because of American culture and BLM agitators, the grievances of America were brought over here when we don't have anything like the race issues that America has. And it was a shameful moment in our history, and I think that's why the statue should go back to where it was.
And this is one of the important facts that he brings up. It's one of the things that interests me about American politics, is the fact that American politics stretches globally. You don't necessarily have to be a citizen to feel the impacts of US policies and politics. And for that matter, culture, whether that's in the arts, music, the US dominates culture worldwide. Like it or not, it has a huge impact on the West. And I think that's why you have so many people like myself in the West that are very interested in US policies, politics, and cultural things.
Well, I do apologise for interrupting earlier. We do tend to get impassioned with these typical debates, Rafe. But I did want to say that 80% of Bristol wanted that statue removed. And like I said, I do have to reiterate the point. For over 100 years, it's been spoken about and criticised. So over 100 years, this has been an issue and they have been ignored. So that's really crucial in understanding the context. So I understand and I appreciate the fact that you've spoken about balance and the fact that he is a good and bad person. We agree on that point, which is always a nice thing to be able to do during a debate.
Do you agree he was a good guy as well?
Of course, balance, right? And this is what I wanted to kind of lead on to in terms of the BLM movement and all of these different EDI initiatives. It's about injecting balance into the conversation, injecting that balance that has been ignored. So that's really important. And then we also have to touch on the fact that the Colston 4 were obviously let off. They weren't charged. And so that's another salient point that we have to introduce. When we talk about damage and the fact that you saw these kind of this mob attacking this statue, well, let's be fair in terms of damage, several things. One was the fact that a really good argument was used. Apparently an art dealer valued the statue at 6,000 originally. And after it was toppled, it went from 6,000 to 150,000 to potentially 300,000. This argument, can I just finish?
Well,
let me finish, please. Thank you. And this argument was actually used in court, and it worked. So that's a really hold on. Hold on. No, but no, that was actually validated. That was actually validated. So it's. But
well,
can I finish, please? Can I finish, please? Secondly, so that was validated. That's a salient point. And then in terms of just kind of understanding that we're not actually trying to eradicate history. I've already mentioned balance, but I really think it's important that if people are so concerned about a statue of a slave trader who advocated for the torture, rape and murder of black people, and that's, can I finish, please? If that is at the heart of British culture, identity and the essence of being British, then one, that explains why we are.
So this is what I don't understand with people that argue about this stuff. Now, I understand why they're arguing about this stuff, but what I don't understand is there are people doing that today that advocate those things she's talking about. Gangs. Now, why isn't she coming out and protesting that? That's happening today, not hundreds of years ago. That has an impact on today's generations and future generations, because we know for a fact that people that are impacted by these acts can be deeply affected and pass it on to future generations as well. So it's just a cycle that goes around over and over and over again. So why not address the things that are happening right now today?
Still contending with racism 400 years later. That makes so much sense now. And of course, I do personally implore the British public to find somewhere else to get their self-esteem, with all due respect, as we now live in an inclusive environment. I'll leave it at that.
The public square is for everybody. And BLM do not have the right to take down statues without public consent. There was no vote for it. There was no decision about any of this. And that's what's the thing here. And if you expunge all of the bad elements from the public square, there'll be no reminders, for example, of slavery. People need to have in their daily lives a reminder of the good and the bad of society. And nothing in this world is binary either. And, you talk about balance. Balance is actually very important. Why on earth would BLM suddenly attack the statue of a 17th century slave trader? If you're genuinely concerned about Black lives, you'll be protesting the fact that 7 in every 1,000 Africans today is living in slavery. 10 million people. So where were the protests? Where were the protests outside the Nigerian High Commission? Where were the protests outside the embassies of Sudan and Chad? Exactly. Let me finish, please, and go on. And also, it's also the hypocrisy here, because the same people who are calling for Colston statue to be toppled are the same ones celebrating and revering the Benin bronzes, for example. The Benin bronzes were commissioned by and commemorate African slave owners, the most brutal slave owners in the world, and yet somehow those are to be celebrated, whereas Colston has to be demolished. And we had that film, The Woman King, out recently. Another film celebrated by BLM, yet that celebrates the warriors of the Dahomey Kingdom, the most brutal slave-owning state in the world history.
Wow.
Who've not only captured and enslaved fellow Africans to sell to Europeans, but held even more slaves to serve themselves on their own plantations in Africa, and then had brutal human sacrifices of tens of thousands of people.
Sorry to interrupt, Rafe, because you are actually on a tear. But have you noticed this woman's body language? The energy all of a sudden dies off. Rafe is like a lion just playing with his food. And it is bizarre how they do celebrate some of these things that go against what they're supposedly standing for. And I think that's why BLM falls short in a lot of ways. Not to mention that they ripped millions of dollars from protesters. Protesters, I mean donors. And went and brought mansions, etc. So hypocrisy is crazy.
Every year the sacrifice would go on. And somehow this is all forgotten about. And it's only Britain that has to somehow apologise for slavery. And that, I think, shows the lack of balance here.
We're almost out of time. 30 seconds each, please, to make your final point.
Thank you. So just in terms of where we are now, one, you spoke about America and England. The difference is overt racism versus covert. That needs to be thrown out there. Secondly, there is hypocrisy on both sides, both on the left and both on the right. And this is what we need to always talk about when talking about balance. We have to be fair. So I will agree on that point. There is hypocrisy on the left and on the right. And then in terms of why we do these things, we always have to remember that, of course, the statue is important for people like you, and this is why we've offered that opportunity for it to be in a museum.
30 seconds from you.
Well, firstly, this is the nicest debate we've had. This has been the most civil of many that we've had. All I would say is I think people need to have perspective and look at the broader picture. Britain is one of the world's 5 least racist countries. Real racism is alive and well in India, China, Africa. We should be at America. We should be very proud to live in this country, which is far more tolerant even than any other European Union country, according to the EU's own report.
And yet you want to keep a statue of a slave trader.
So let's recognise and celebrate Britain led the world in abolishing the slave trade.
And yet you want to keep a slave trader.
We are out of time. It's good to talk to both of you. Let's see
Thank
what
you.
happens.
So there we have it, folks. Now, these two have been sparring partners from way back. And if you like, I'll jump into some more of their debates because they are quite interesting. This one was quite tame compared to others. And I always find Rafe to be clear, concise, and well balanced in his views. He seems to be holistic and takes all perspectives in and comes and delivers facts. Iman reminds me of a school teacher sitting there and deals with her opposition like a school teacher. In other words, treating Rafe like a naughty little child. And her body language seems to change whenever she's delivered some facts that she is uncomfortable about. She's very boisterous when it comes to her opinion on things, and she's looking at the slave trade from one perspective. British bad, everyone else good. But as Rafe pointed out, Britain falls 5th on the least racist country in the globe, and points out that slavery still continues in Africa, yet Iman doesn't really touch on that, does she? And in my opinion, this is where this argument from her perspective falls very well short. I disagree that today we should be deciding on history whether to tear things down or not. We seem to be looking at things in the West from a high moral ground, yet the West, especially the wokesters, are far less tolerant. Humans are complicated, complex. It's very easy to be Monday morning quarterbacking when we're sitting with the knowledge we have today looking back 200-300 years ago, while sitting on our hands while slavery still exists today and even more widespread. So an interesting little debate there between Iman and Rafe. Let me know your thoughts. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. As usual, I'll jump in there and respond as I normally do. If you want to help a brother out, help me get to the 1000 sub club. Don't forget to like, most importantly, share, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next video.